Hi, Jim Van Zant, one of the pastors here at Carlisle United Methodist Church, Sermon in 3 minutes. We're in the middle of a series called Who is Jesus? After all, the cross is the centerpiece on the altar here at CUMC. We know that it represents Jesus, but do we really know who Jesus is? There are many facets of Jesus that some we're not comfortable with, but others bring us a great deal of comfort. This past week, we lifted up one of the titles that Jesus uses for himself. We know that Peter called him the Christ, called the Messiah, but it's interesting, of all the titles of Jesus, Christ is by far the one most used in the New Testament, followed by Lord, and in third place was Son of Man. But what's interesting, that's the title that Jesus chose to use when he referred to himself. Now, we think Son of Man sounds very pleasant to us, might bring up the humanity of Jesus a bit, that he identifies with us and all of that kind of thing. And we're right, partly, but not wholly. The Son of Man meant something completely different to those first century Christians and the crowd that would have heard him talk about it. See, the Son of Man was this mysterious Old Testament figure who was sent down from heaven, roamed the earth in human-like form, and then went back to the throne room of God to report back what he had seen. And all the charges against all the people who were there would have been written in a book and presented to the Ancient One. It's a vision that both Daniel and John, the gospel writer John, write about in the Bible. Daniel in his book in the Old Testament, and John in the book of Revelation, the scene of the throne room of God. And this Son of Man figure was like a prosecuting attorney. So when Jesus used that term, they would have been curious and a bit afraid about that. There are a couple places in the New Testament that we can see where Jesus understood this authoritative role that he was to have, along with all of the other parts. One is in an argument with the Pharisees about him healing on the Sabbath day. And he says to the Pharisees, I'm Lord of the Sabbath. And then not too long later, he has another argument with the Pharisees about his authority to forgive sins. And in response to that, Jesus says the Son of Man has authority to forgive sins. So we know that Jesus understood that he had an authoritative role as well. So again, when people in the first century hear this, they're not all real sure. What's interesting is the Son of Man is always depicted as being seated at the right hand of the Ancient One, who we understand to be God. But there's another scene in the New Testament, a very important scene for you and I, and it's when Stephen, the first Christian martyr, is being martyred, stoned to death for professing Jesus and preaching Jesus. And as he is being stoned to death, the gospel writer Luke, who writes the book of Acts, he's the one who records Stephen saying that he saw the Son of Man coming down toward him. And often in paintings of the stoning of Stephen is depicted as reaching up with his right hand as if to grasp the hand of Jesus. That's very important to us because we understand that our only way through the throne room of God is Jesus. What Jesus literally does is when you and I enter that throne room, which we will do, the scriptures talk about personal accountability. It's Jesus who will come down from his seat at the right hand of the Father, stand between us and God, put his robe around us as if God doesn't even see this, and literally says to God, this one is mine, whatever punishment, whatever is due them, I will take that. I will take it upon myself. That's what it means by being robed in the righteousness of Christ, being covered by the blood of Christ. So we have much to celebrate in Jesus. He is many things to us. He is Christ, he is Messiah, but he's also Son of God, and he's also our only way through the throne room. Thank God for Jesus today.